Yo, Patreon crew. So yeah, this month I've decided to do a really in-depth track breakdown for the one of the tracks that I posted up on Patreon last year or this year, January. A new one called Sudden. Um, what I'm gonna do is, rather than the usual, like just run through the sort of finished tune, I want to like try and go quite in depth into every bit of it. Um, so I've got like multiple projects starting from the very initial sketch ideas, samples that I've used and chopped up and like taken from YouTube and stuff. And then sort of progressing on to arrangement and like grouping things and buses, and sort of basically the finished track. And then what I'll do is probably bounce the stems and give the stems away as well with the video. I don't see why not. If there might be some use to you, there might not, but it's kind of cool to have something to go alongside the video. So it's going to be long. I might break it up into parts. We'll see. Hopefully I'll get through it and it'll just be like sort of concise, but it might drag on a bit. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Pew, pew. Big up, big up, big up. So where we at? Ableton. So yeah, this is the tune. It is a sort of tribally, rollery sort of vibe. Cool, so you get the idea. You probably noticed quite a lot of samples. There's a lot of stuff that's I've played in. There's also a lot of stuff from sample packs. I love using samples. I've said before. I don't see anything wrong with it as long as you manipulate shit and move it and make it in your own. You know, it can be a wicked to create a vibe. Sometimes I use samples and then just remake them. Sometimes it sounds cool. Leave it, whatever, man. Everyone's got their own ways of working, and I don't see any issues with using samples if you create something original out of them. But you know, each their own. So anyway, this is the final project. You can see it's got basic. I normally use 3 or 4 basic groups. I think there's like 4 in this one, and the side chains. This is nothing, so I can delete that. So drums, samples in this one. Sometimes that goes in the vibes, but it's normally just drums, bass, and vibes. And then I put all my effects in vibes as well, because the kind of way I work with effects, I sort of try and treat them as if they are part of the sort of musical elements. Basically, drums, bass, and anything else, just to try and keep it simple. This one, the whole idea of the tune, I think, actually started and originated from me chopping up another tune by another producer and sort of creating something weird out of it. But we'll get to that. You probably saw then the name on the sample. So yeah, I'm going to close this project now, and I'm going to go back in and open up the very first project, and we'll see like how it started and how shit it's going to sound. And then I'll go and open up the I think there was 4 or 5 different versions of the tune which led on to this one. And then obviously when I get to this one, I'll like go break down all of the sort of the techniques I've used in creating it. So first project, what was it? Oh, maybe I should have looked through these. What is that? Is that all it is? Just like a breakbeat? What's all this stuff here? Nothing in that. Okay, cool. Well, there's absolutely nothing in this project, so I can close that one straight away. Project number 2. Feels like it's got more stuff in it. Here we go. Right. So this is some drums. Oh, I remember now. I made this bass line with Reactor. That's it. So what is this? Okay, cool. So the mid bass is coming from Reactor. This thing. There we go. So yeah, I'm sure you already know. If you don't, Reactor's a wicked synth that comes with Native Instruments complete. You can probably buy it separately. It has the blocks feature as well, which is like the modular, their version of like a digital modular setup. And I think, yeah, I just clicked in factory library and then synthesizers, and it's got one called Oki Computer. I think this is just like a preset. It's fat Reese sounding. Oof, this is sick. I always forget about this, man. I actually remember playing with it years ago. I think this is like a really, like it says V2 here, I can't even remember. I think this is super old, this synth. It looks shit and old, but actually I think it looks fucking cool. I seem to remember playing with it in like 2012, the first, maybe V1, so it's been around, but I think that's just a preset. That fat, that is sick. So that's obviously where that Reese, the Reese mid-range bass bit comes from. Is this just the same? Okay, I mean I shouldn't, that's, I won't save it, but that's obviously that. So what did I do? Just wrote a weird line and then a weird second line and put like an LFO on it. So yeah, I was clearly trying to come up with some sort of idea. It's always the way, man. Spend bloody hours and hours just twiddling with shit, and then what have I done? I've just like, sorry if I just breathed really loudly into the mic. I've just so yeah, clearly I've just been experimenting. There's nothing else in the tune, just a crap bass line, but obviously the idea came from that synth. Maybe at the time I thought that was good enough to warrant saving it as version 2 and then opening a new one in version 3, but clearly it wasn't. Let's see what version 3 is saying. Hopefully it's a bit more like the tune, like that we ended up with. It's always how it works though, man. I don't know, some people might get ideas down quicker, but I always seem to tunes are really quick to write once you've got the idea, but getting the right idea, I'm never 100% confident on anything I do, so it takes a lot of mucking around with things. Right, okay, that sounds more like the tune. Distorting like Ross. So I'm just going to turn these drums down a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, so what this is obviously the same, pretty much the same drums as in the actual finished tune. So I suppose the only interesting part about that is the sort of shuffles, because it's just a kick. If I get rid of the kick, so what is it? Yeah, okay, that's cool. So basically, I don't know, I think I mentioned before, but I like using swing templates groove templates in Ableton. So what I'll do is, so this kick drum pattern, wherever it is, Monty. So I've made like a pattern, and then I will like quantize it like dead straight. So I think that's Command Shift U, and then 16th. So that's like robotic, very on the bar. And then in here I'll go like MPC 8 swing 54%, and then commit it, and then you'll notice that it like has moved it off the grid a little bit. And if you do it over a long thing like 16 bars, I think this is an 8, and the difference between 16 and 8, I think, like is the timing. So obviously if you do 16th note hi-hats, like like that's, you want to use 16th, but anything slower than 16ths you want to use 8. Otherwise, if you use 16th on something slow, you get like weird, not cool sounding swing. Anyway, so I think that was the only interesting thing that I've done on the kicks and snares. But what I always do is I'll make the pattern, do that, and then I'll write 54% in it so I remember, and then I'll copy, like with my side chains up here, kick, and the blanks that I send to the different compressors and whatnot. I'll like copy the kick up there so the swing is the same on everything, same as a snare. I'll write my snare line in, like quantize it to the grid rigidly, and then once I know it's perfect, then hit MPC 8 swing 54% as well, and do that on like all kicks, all the snares, and the side change of the kicks and snares, so everything is always synced. Because I find that if you have one not, you can mix up swings for sure and make them sound good, like 58, 56% and 57% with a 54%. It's all about ears. But if you want, like, if you've got multiple layers of snares, like this has got a sort of clappy thing and a real like neurofunk sort of like tweak sort of thing, I want them both on the same swing. Anyway, so that's all that's going on with the kicks and snares. Some pretty like basic hats. I think they're just literally just two different velocities. One louder, one, and that's not even. I don't think these have even been swung. Maybe they have. Yeah, a little bit. Maybe I did the 64%, the 54% 16th note swing on them. Straight hats. So I mean, it sounds horrible, as you can tell, but it is what it is. It's the early days of the tune. Open hat. Oh yeah, this has got this little distortion thing. I always use this thing with waves. This is wicked. I use it to make things sound dirty. So without it, just a normal hat, it's like a sort of, I call it, I made a preset and call it Akai Ring because it reminds me of an old Akai sampler when they're like, you know, like the sort of bit rate that they used to work in, or they still do work in, is like the old ones were 12-bit, and you could like make things sound quite like crunchy and distorted with it. So I always do that on my like cymbals and splashy cymbals. Kind of sounds like erosion, but like crapper. And then yeah. So the rest of it is the shuffle. So I'm going to get rid of all this crap and mute it just so we can hear what the shuffle's doing by itself. If I just mute these guys here. So this is all stuff out of sample packs, I think. Sample Genie, I think, yeah. I think most of this is bongos from Gridlock. Got Decapitator on that, which if you're not using, you should use. I got it recently, and it's basically just goes on fucking everything in my tunes. Wicked on bass, wicked on drums. You can like dry wet it. You can set it on savage mode. These are different emulations of classic bits of hardware. I like the T setting. I did read somewhere that it was like a Neve tube or something, so for some reason I've just stuck it on that for now, but I don't know, each one sounds different on different sorts of sounds. Got a QZB shuffle break at the end. A QZB break of a old funk break. And then what, a reverby percussive hit. I've got my on my sends, I think I've mentioned before, but if this is your first video of mine you've watched, I'll say it again. I set my sends up specific to how I want them. I think the default is just a reverb and a delay with Ableton, but I've made myself like a template so it opens every time with same sort of the same sends and returns. I change them every now and again, just to like sort of spice things up a bit, but I think it's quite good for creating your own sound, as it were, because you just want your writing quickly. You don't want to be like thinking about this, that and the other, putting on new sends, new returns. I know that I want to have something which can make things fake wide, using the Hass effect on like my first one. So if I'm just listening to a sound, I want to quickly be able to be like this bongo, you can see it's got like maximum wide on it. So if it's like, I like that sort of sound. Maybe some people don't, but I like being able to like quickly like smack things left and right, hard to hear what it sounds like, and then like you can put space in the middle, and then I normally bring it back in. So yeah, I widener, which like I said, it's the Hass effect, which means you basically delay one side by a certain amount of milliseconds. And then I normally just put a low cut. This has got a mid-side EQ low cut. Delay on my second, I love this delay with waves. H delay is sick. If you have it on a send, as you're probably aware, you want it on 100% wet. If you put it on a insert, just on the channel here, you will want to play with the wet dry, depending on the effect you're going for. Ping pong makes it bounce from left to right. It's got these cool filters on it, which are more applicable when you've put it on an insert, because then you can automate them. But as a default, if I just want to throw a delay on something just to quickly see what it sounds like delayed in the tune, like my send is just set to dotted eighth notes, just because to my ears it's a nice, I like that sort of, I like dotted notes in music. Like triplets and dotted notes are cool, but my brain just like enjoys the sound of dotted noted stuff. And then I have a short reverb, which is, I think, got quite a harsh cut on it. It's like just for tops sort of stuff, and that's this Valhalla reverb. And then I've got a long reverb, which is the same but just with a longer decay. It's like 5.5 seconds, and that's just, again, this is all just stuff which I normally, once I've made the tune, I'll go back in and like fine tune these. But I think it's good to have a bunch of stuff just on your sends and returns, which, you know, can affect the sound quickly for you, so you can just catch a vibe quickly. And then I have a saturator, which I like using. I like the Ableton one, but I quite often have this as my, like, the Saturn set up on my sends, and that's just a preset with basic, and then I've just tweaked it a little bit just to throw on things. Again, you can see it's like, you know, it just adds crunch and snap and a bit of top end to things if things sounded a bit dull. And then the chorus just on the end. This is without doubt my favourite chorus I've ever used. You know, there might be better ones out there. This is like a freeware one, which I watched Willem on a production video many moons ago use, and it's free, and I downloaded it and I use it on everything. It's wicked. So anyway, white noise, boring, whatever, cliche, noise floor. What's this? That is just some noise. Some like less fizzy white noise, and it's sidechained off the kick. Probably just add a bit of dirt underneath. Some ride cymbal, and then a train going down the track. No, I don't know what that is. I've made that on something. I think that's actually one that I've made. Oh, I think it was from the first sample video I did. I think the stems are already on one of my Patreon months for that. I think that was the one when I did the break, the one on Shogun. Maybe I did like a break beat, how I make like chopping up funk breaks. I could probably pull it out and see. I think so, yeah. I think that's one that I made before. So all layered together, that was the sort of break. You can, I mean, the mix sounds horrible, doesn't it? But sounds horrible, but it's got energy, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, and there's a QZB effect there. Big up the QZB crew, mate. They know how to make some good tunes and some wicked sounds. Anyway, so yeah, that was the break, and then the sample. Oh yeah, so basically what I wanted to do with this was to make the vibe from sample. So I think what I did is just made a breakbeat, and then I wanted to chop something up to create a different vibe. When you make so many tunes all the time, it can get a bit boring sometimes, I suppose, just doing the same like process, like make a beat, trying to make an interesting bass sound, trying to make an interesting bass line, and then adding sounds on top of it. And I think I just wanted to make, like you hear old funk breaks with like Lynn Collins, like tambourines or whatever, with bits of like and like James Brown sort of vocals and stuff in. I wanted to create a break which had its own version of that, but like not from old classic funk samples, but with more contemporary tunes that I like. And Burial is one of my, and I'm sure many others, all-time favourite producer, and Archangel is one of, my favourite pieces of electronic music, one of my favourite pieces of music ever written. And I thought it'd be an interesting experiment, is probably the right word, to take Archangel and chop it up into weird little noises and take little sections out of it at random, kind of in a DJ Premier sort of way, like very small bits which are unnoticeable to the original tune. Obviously I would never bootleg like Archangel by Burial and like butcher it, but it's got just so much vibe in this tune. Obviously, like it's got loads of cool vocals in it. Samples of samples, man. Okay, so yeah, that's what I've done. I've kind of like telephone filtered it all, so it had this like drastic low cut and high cut. Anyway, so I just thought, right, bang, chop, 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 chop. So I got some slices out of it. I've not done it any justice at all, but it's what am I going to do? So this is the first hit is literally the very end of the tune, the outro. It's just that. So I took that. As you can see here, I put tuner on it just so I know what note it is. Have I pitched it at all? No, it's the same. So this has got this vocal stab here. So I've done some shit to that, loads of that on it, loads of that on it. Tell me what? And then okay, so yeah. And then this one here is another little bit. And then on the group, I've put this decapitator on the group. That's what's giving it all that distortion. So yeah, it's basically just it's just given me some like life in an otherwise pretty synthesized breakbeat. I mean, it's not the kicks and the snares and stuff. As you saw, the kick was like out of a Monty sample pack. Some of the bongos were out of various different drum and bass producers packs from Sample Genie, and some shuffles that I made with an old funk break layered all together, and then little chops of Burial that's what making music is to me, man. Just having fun, you know, having ideas, experimenting with things. um that's like, I think that you can be purist about things, and I am a purist about certain parts of music production for sure. Like, I certainly wouldn't ever take Burial, Archangel, and like take the hook of it and loop it up in my tune and then write a tune around that, so it's like a cheesy bootleg. But everyone has to make their own decisions, I suppose, to where they draw the line of what they deem as acceptable in making music. And it is what it is, man. What was this? This was actually in. This is another sample that I've done something with, that I've layered in. That to me sounds like I've gone on YouTube. Quite often what I do, I think you could probably do it with all sound cards, but with I've got like a Focusrite sound card that allows me to just record in the background. So I can go on YouTube, and I'll quite often just set a channel up in live, like here, and then it's called like loopback or something like that, and then it basically just does a loop of, well, I don't know, it's called loopback, but anyway, yeah, then I'll hit record in live, and then just go on YouTube and spend hours listening through stuff, smoke a vaporizer, listen to loads of weird different stuff, go on a YouTube rabbit hole, clicking through videos, skipping through them, watching little bits, and then come back to it, and I've got like a half an hour long chunk of audio, and then I'll just bounce it and save it into a folder on my computer. I've got like like Studio, Splice, Sample Genie, Breaks, Studio here. If I click in that, it's got like my sample library, acapellas, breakbeats, various different things, all my like main sample packs, and then like I'll normally save it in like acapellas, so these are all just various bits that I've just jacked off YouTube or whatever. So I think that's all that is, and there's not really anything else going on, and it's just EQ to cut off the rumble. Super subtle in the background. And then yeah, this has got the bass. I think what we'll probably hear here is yeah, so this is the actual bass line. So if I like the sort of glidey Reese, so the actual synth, the line is whatever that is, D sharp, F sharp, E. Really cutting new new ground with that line. I'm not the best musician, pianist, but hey ho, it's all good. And then yeah, the synths that I used were that same one in Reactor, that OK Computer. Which kind of sounds like that, and then Operator, I think, is the sub part of it, and I've just put them together so I can play it as like one synth. There's something wicked about Ableton, you can group things like that, so if I want to have like my sub here and then the mid there, this is just acting as one synth. Yeah, you see the vibe. And this has just got distortion, chorus. This has just got a compressor for the kick drum, and then probably rolled off. Yep. And then I've bounced it to audio just to stop myself from endlessly tweaking and not being happy with anything. And what I've done is soloed. I'll have just soloed Reactor, and it's this one here, the mids, and then soloed Operator, and it's this one here. Sub, nothing going on there, I don't think, except for maybe a compressor. Ooh. Compressor and an EQ, some pretty drastic boosting to get some more sub out of it. Oh yeah, and I've obviously done a filter automation opening up in React. Yeah, you can see that there. So if I click, I think if I right click, yeah, so it's the filters changing inside of here. It's obviously one of these. Maybe the cutoff of the filter there is being automated. And then that's basically that for the baseline. And then I think that isn't doing that. Oh no, the vocal's coming from the burial thing, isn't it? Oh, bass hits. Like DC breaks hit from a Sample Genie pack, and I think Lawrence Halogenics bass hit from another Sample Genie pack that he did, and together I just, changed the pitch of them. So it kind of they sound similar. I mean, they don't, but they didn't originally. But I think that was the, take a sample. If you put it in a sampler, you can obviously play them at the same notes. Maybe I put probably the same plugins on after them both to kind of tie them together a bit. And I thought, just like the interplay between the bass stab and the vocal. As I said, it sounds rough as guts at the moment, but that's the mix down sort of comes with making the tune. And then is there anything going on? I never really have anything on my master, just a fab filter. This is pushed quite hard. That's probably why it sounds so rubbish. I don't know, man. Like I wish I knew how to. I don't really know like if there's rules or if there's better things, like better ways of doing things to make your master sound better. I've got no idea, so I just put a limiter on it with 10 milliseconds look ahead to stop any peaks, and then I try and make all my sounds come from the tune, but then I'll hear other people's tunes that sound way punchier and fatter and louder than mine and not distorting. I have no idea how they do it, so maybe I could, if anyone knows of any good tricks of how to put things on your master chain to make your tunes sound better whilst you're writing them, please drop me a message. Right, so that is number 3. Open recent, number 3, number 4. I'll see what's any different in this one. Hopefully it'll be less clipping. Waiting for masters to come back. Waiting for that email, the magic email. Okay, this has got hieroglyphs visaged in there as a mix reference. Quite often do that if I'm getting to a point where I think I want to like sort the mix down out on the tune that I'm writing. I'll find a tune which I think has a good mix down, chuck it in just to like reference how loud the kicks and the snares are, because sometimes when I'm writing tunes the snares can get really quiet in the mix for some reason, probably because they sound quite pokey initially, and then you just layer things on top and they disappear. And unless you're doing like subtractive EQing and whatnot, like I don't know, listen to tunes enough, you probably all know that your brain starts filtering things out. So I'll like chuck in someone's tune near the end of my, when it comes to actually balancing the levels in a tune, and then just to like quietly listen, kick, snare, bass, how things are sounding, and then normally I start deleting things out of my tune to like clean up the mix a bit. So yeah, this is the actual final version. I just renamed it. Patreon Breakdown, but this is actually exactly the same. So you can see what we've got: some intro hats that are they're swung, got the burial vocal bits. Got the main bass line filtered just to give you a bit of, let you know what you're in for. Some FM8 noises like pads. Another riser from Sample Genie. That's your halogenic stab from that sample pack. But yes, so what I would have done then, you can see here, I might have explained this before, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but once I get to the point when I think the vibe's good enough to want to make the tune sound, to like finish the tune for instance, I will, obviously you want to mix things, and normally I'm redlining the fuck out of every channel. So I put a new channel in at 0. There might be better ways of doing this. I think I'm probably working a pretty backward sort of way to most people, but I'll put like a tune. So my drum group for instance, all my drums are in here. Interesting. All my sounds except for the kick and the snare. That is another thing I sometimes do, because I'll carry on with what I was saying first of all. So I'll put a blank audio channel with nothing in it into my drum group, one into my sample group, one into my bass group, one into my vibes group, so I have one channel and color code it and set it to 0 dB. And then what I'll do is I'll select everything in that channel and then hit on the level channel. You see it says -9. I'll drop it down by like 10 decibels or 12 decibels or whatever, so nothing's clipping in the channel. And then do that to the same as every other one. So the bass one will be, if I've done it -9, I'll do the bass, the level and all the bass things down -9, the vibes and all the vibes thing down -9, the drums and all the drums, all of these down by -9. So the whole tune is just turned down. And like you can obviously do that here, and I don't ever automate the volume control, so I could in theory just select all of them and pull them all down, but I find having like a blank channel, which I've like made like coded dark grey and called level in capitals, and it's like, it just, for some reason, for my brain anyway, it works. It makes me feel like all I'm doing is taking everything that I've made and turning them all down the same level, so nothing's redlining. And then you start hearing because obviously when you're clipping things, you're getting like soft limiting going on inside various plugins and inside Ableton's got like, I know Ableton has like 6 dB of headroom above 0 dB before it clips, so they say, and I know various different plugins also say the same sort of thing. They have like the Pro Q stuff, even though it might be hitting the reds in your EQ, it's not going to digitally clip it for like quite high above that, but they set it at that so you don't completely rag it. So yeah, normally what I do once I've got the tune sounding how I think I want it, or it's worth finishing, then I will pull it down, pull everything down. So you can see here the kick is still going in 0.3, but that won't actually be distorting. Oh, it is distorting, he says, and then it just distorts on the second hit. And what I've done with the kick, and I think the snare, although all of these sounds are in my drum group, and this is my drum group, what I've done is set the kick to come out straight to the master rather than come out through these things, just to keep a bit of punch. So what I've done in the master group, in my drum bus group, is put some distortion on at the beginning. So what I'll do is I'll solo this, and then we can have a so it's like added some pretty like full on drive to the whole drum, to all of the tops and the drums. I've got one of these consoles on. I saw a production video that DLR did on Future Music, and he was using this, so I signed up to Plugin Alliance and used it as well, and I think it's fucking wicked. Thanks, Jay. It's got this THD thing here, which if you turn up is like, I think he said he said, not like I know for sure, but I think he said it was like output drive like you have on old school desks, and then you've just got like an EQ channel and compressor, expander, filter. I just normally boost, and then the compressor's cool because it's got a wet dry. So on this one I don't think I've actually done anything, but you can do like New York parallel style compression on it, set a savage like threshold, so it's a really pumping compression technique, and then just like turn the mix right down so you can't hear it at all, and then just put a tiny bit of it back in, and you just get like really top, you get like the envelopes of the tops of all your drums really punching through. But I didn't actually do it on this track. This is automated to come on, this is automated to come on, this is automated, this is a utility. So this is like if I did want to automate volume, like whenever I want to automate that just volume, I will generally just stick a utility on and automate the gain there. What I find with this console is when you put this on your tunes and boost and you know, make things sound fatter and more analog, quote unquote, you lose the transient. So I quite often at the end of my bus will go back in with a transient shaper and put you know, which is Alloy 2 is like my favourite one because it's multi-band, and then like put your attacks back on, put your transients back on. I mean, this is really aggressive, and like I haven't listened to this tune in, you know, a couple of months, and it's pretty fucking harsh to be fair, but like you can hear the kick drums clipping. I wonder if I left it like that in the bounce that's on Patreon. You guys will probably know. Sorry if it sounds like it's clipping. So yeah, that's the drums. Mix wise, that's the drums. The arrangement is very similar to the last project. .49, but you know, drop in. 49's got some cymbals, which has got that distorted thing I was talking about on before, the Akai sort of ride. I mean, it's a pretty fucking aggressive tune, actually, thinking about it. Some filtered, it's got the same bongos, but filtered down a bit to give more of a dubby-ish sort of vibe. That's what I wanted to do, actually, is I've got once I filtered down the bongos, because I still wanted to keep the vibe of it in the tune, but then put the top to get, because I'd filtered it out and I still wanted the top end energy, put some tambourines in. Just a rago break set of tams. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the drums. That's pretty self-explanatory. And I've on the breakdown in the intro. Is that just the bongos? I've just bounced the bongos into audio and then filtered them up, automated them, filtered coming up. And yeah, the kick and the snare are just both coming out of just the master. just to keep the punch so they don't go through all of this stuff. So yeah, that's the drums. Then the bass is the same. Oh no, we got the sample. It's just the same as before. These are all out of that, all out of Archangel. It's just got a ridiculous amount of distortion. That one's got camel flat on it. If I take all this off. Sounds like a car screeching. I mean, I've butchered the tune, haven't I? Let's be fair. You know, I've just like progressed it, basically, the sample throughout the tune. So I've just like I said before, bounced the bass, automated it at the beginning. I think it's got some reverb on it as well, just to like, you know, give you a little idea of what you're going to be getting. So the sub has just got a sidechain going to this for the kick, some boosting, and the mid-side EQ to keep it mono in the very bottom. Mids. They're just bounces of the OK Computer thing from Reactor. That's it, and there's nothing special going on there at all. What's on the group? Oh yeah, that's another thing I quite often, well actually I say quite often, now I've discovered how to use multi-band compression over the last sort of month, I suppose. Something I've been trying to wrap my head around for years but never really experimented with, so not really thought about it too much. But recently, instead of basically like to stop frequencies clashing, I watched this thing, apparently like the crossovers between the frequencies in multi-band compressors, it like scoops out the, I'll show you what I'm talking about rather than just waving my mouse around. So if I'll just create a new one of these. So basically, if you cut all the bass out of a tune with one like that, and then you duplicate the channel and you cut all the tops out of the tune, the difference between this curve and that curve you'll have this frequency section in the middle, which is I think the crossover, and multi-band compressors sort out the sort of crossovers properly, rather than just like the way that you would do it with EQs yourself manually. Or they seem to make things, you can put things together without them distorting and clipping better. You can tell my really technical expertise there. But anyway, I find that if you got a sub and a mid together and they sound a bit savage, sometimes if you just chuck a standard multi-band compressor on, which is literally that is the preset, which it comes, I think it's called Audio Effects, multi-band dynamics, a standard multi-band comp. Literally, I've not even fucked around, but every time I fuck around with this, every time I use OTT, which is apparently something that everyone rinses, I've never ever been able to get it to sound good on anything. Like OTT for me just always sounds super aggressive and super savage. And I realise OTT stands for over the top, but I'm sure people I rate use it and their shit doesn't sound savage, but every time I put on anything it sounds fucking horrible, like really aggy bro step. But maybe, as you know, I'm using it wrong because I've only just started using multi-band compressors. I've been using the one, actually the Fab Filter one is wicked, the Pro MB. Like all their stuff's wicked, but the FabFilter Pro MB, which is, in case you haven't seen it or used it, looks like this. And when you've got something playing through it, you can like pull down. It'll like duck down the frequencies. It'll show you where the frequencies are, and you can just like pull down a bit, and it's really nice for tidying up subtle like savage frequencies in mixes. So yeah, that's the drums, that's the bass, that's the sample, and then the vibe out group is just I think these barky sounds were from The Virus. This is the Lawrence sample from Sample Genie pack he did. Joe Ford risers and stuff. Well, I think it's just a noise down that I've just reversed, so it's a riser. FM8, I think I played to get some noise, some sort of wind. With a bit of side chaining on. Just some pads to add a bit of padness. Nothing on the group for them. There was only a multi-band compressor on the bass one. Bit of the same thing on the master bus. You know, that's it really. This is just on the master, probably adding a bit more dirt. Like I say, I can hear the tune is pretty clippy now. It's distorting. I have played it out a couple of times and it sounded alright. But I can definitely, for sure, hear the kick, the second kick. Da-dum, da-dum-dum. The kick is clipping a little bit on the top, and not a nice distortion way, like in a sort of digital horrible clipping way. This is the bass is hitting at -3 dB. The kick's hitting at just under -3 dB to about the same, probably. You know, sounded alright in the club anyway. But yeah, I hope that's something that you found informative. I'll bounce. What I'm going to do is bounce the some sounds. I mean, I don't even know if it's worth. Oh yeah, maybe I'll bounce the break. I could just bounce the break and the bass line and stuff. I suppose it's nothing like particularly groundbreaking, but you might find them interesting. Sweet. This is an hour long, so you know, thanks for sticking with it. If you have, I could maybe break into 2 parts. Yeah, I'll probably break into 2 parts. Anyway, thanks for checking it out, and thank you also for continued support on Patreon. Getting my masters today for my new EP, which is coming out on March 23rd. More information to follow with that. It's got a tune called Squirt on it, which is a little bit of a fucking naughty one. Anyway, big up yourselves. Thank you very much again. Peace.